Power creep has officially gone full swing in Genshin Impact. There was clear evidence hinting Ahoyo's willingness to take a more cavalier approach to power scaling in Natlan after witnessing the numbers they originally had set for Milani before they nerfed her, along with Kanisha's good performance and Shilonen being in contention for one of the top 3 best characters in the game. Chasca and Ororon have been teased for Genshin 5.2, and while I normally go over just the 5 stars, I want to talk about both of them today, as these two might be the biggest leap in power for their respective rarities the game has ever seen. What's even more pressing is that they're part of 2 elements that frankly did not need to be power crept, certainly not right now anyways. So I'll be analyzing both Chasca and Ororon's abilities in gameplay and talk about the sheer impact they'll potentially have in the game because holy shit, we're in for a ride this time. All I can say is they're setting the bar impossibly high for Mavuika when she inevitably comes out in 5.3 or 5.4. Now, even though I'm about to glaze the hell out of Chasca, and believe me, she deserves it, I'm sure most of you guys are currently sitting in the Mavuika waiting room at the moment. For those who are, may I suggest you try out Ash Echoes Global in the meantime. For those unaware, Ash Echoes Global completed their closed beta just recently and launched across the world on mobile and PC. It's a real-time tactics tower defense RPG with a ton of different gameplay elements to it, ranging from the strategical parts like the aforementioned tower defense and grid-based gameplay to even roguelike exploration. The game has you controlling Echomancers, characters with unique powers and abilities that can be used to work in tandem with each other for special reactions. The game's production quality is definitely up there with the big players in the gacha industry, having been developed using Unreal Engine to combine 2D and 3D artwork together. Ash Echoes Global also places big emphasis on narrative with a comprehensive story that helps you learn more about the environment and the various Echomancers. If you're interested more in that side of things and less on the gameplay, rest assured it comes with an auto battle mode, while still leaving open the option for you to manually input whenever you want to. The game has been thoroughly optimized for both mobile and PC, which by the way you can link your account across multiple devices if you want to play on the go or at home. To celebrate the release of Ash Echoes Global, they're giving away a total of 200 free pulls, along with a promotion package if you use my link on screen or down in the description below. Be sure to check it out, it's brand new and looking pretty good. Many people have been discussing it on the Gacha Gaming subreddit, so if you're looking for something to help you kill time during the holidays, I can't think of a better one than this. Thanks again to Ash Echoes Global for sponsoring the video, but for now, back to Chasca and Ororon. The hallmark experience of Genshin Impact's combat is to mix and match characters of differing elements to produce a collective output greater than the sum of their individual strengths. The way they do so is through elemental reactions. That should be common knowledge to everyone by this point. All of Genshin's balancing metrics are governed by the elements and the systems associated with each one, and even though some may have a unique interaction or two with a specific element, the cardinal rule is that a hydro character is a hydro character, a pyro character is a pyro character, so on and so forth. There's one exception to this, the Anemo element. Thanks to both Swirl and Elemental Absorption, Anemo units can assimilate their party members' attacks, providing additional elemental damage and application of Hydro, Electro, Pyro, and/or Cryo. However, there's never been a point in time where a unit of one element intrinsically outputs damage of another element. That is, until now. Enter Chasca, our newest Anemo 5-star character and the first in Genshin Impact history to be able to deal other forms of elemental damage unassisted. Let's go through her abilities in detail since they have some of the wordiest descriptions to date. Like her Natlan neighbors, Chasca can enter a mounted stance. In her case, she flies around on her gun, making her the second character to be able to fly after Wander. Standard tapping lets you shoot Anemo bullets to enemies in the line of fire, not unlike a traditional bowshot, which is something you'll never be doing if you have more than 2 brain cells. What you want to do instead is hold the skill, wherein she rapidly charges up to 6 bullets before unleashing them in a volley. Here's the fun part, depending on who the other 3 party members are on your team, Chasca's 4th, 5th, and 6th bullets deal elemental damage corresponding to the elements of her party members. Yes, she's the first character in Genshin Impact to deal elemental damage without any external source required, as in compared to other Anemo units who need a source of Pyro, Hydro, Cryo, or Electro, Chasca's party members don't even have to do anything for her to assimilate their elements. She turns into a one-woman reactor. Every use of her skill allows you to fire up to 4 volleys of 6 bullets, with the mounted state behaving identically to the way Wander's airtime works, meaning you can move and aim while attacking, however the reloading does slow down while doing so. You can think of Chasca's skill as Navia's skill that charges automatically instead of requiring Crystallize and her ultimate shells. It should be noted that Chasca's elemental shots deal substantially more damage than the base ones, so you want to load up to maximum before letting it rip. Now, her A1 passive makes it so the 3rd bullet also converts into an empowered one, randomly selecting between one of her 3 party members' elements for a total of 2 regular Anemo and 4 empowered elemental bullets. To guarantee this happening though, your party must be a rainbow one, as in no repeat elements. If you don't have a rainbow team, then you have a chance to fail the dice roll, and instead your next bullet will be a regular Anemo shot. To give you an idea just how much damage is tagged onto Chasca's skill, unleashing all 6 rounds on a single target and accounting for a 1 will deal a total of 80% times 2, and then 300% times 4, amounting to just over 1450% damage, and then she can fire 4 rounds of this per use of her skill. meaning Chasca deals 5800% damage per activation of her skill. On a cooldown of only 6.5 seconds, she deals 5800% damage across 4 volleys. This is without considering the fact that, remember, she fires elemental shots with applications on her 1st, 3rd, and 5th bullets, which in the order of charge is her 6th, 4th, and 2nd bullets. In other words, she can trigger Vaporize and Melt by herself, multiplying the damage of her 4th bullet by either 1.5 or 2 times for even more damage. Chasca basically tears through any boss you can think of, and unlike Elemental Absorption or Swirl, which can be difficult to control sometimes, Chasca will guarantee specific elemental shots for at least half her chamber based on who is in your party. However, there's technically one extra bullet that gets fired. Chasca's A4 passive has it so anytime a Night Soul Burst is triggered, a bullet gets fired equivalent to one of the bullets on her skill, and if at least one member in your party is a PHEC element, the bullet becomes an empowered one. Either way, it does 1.5 times damage or 450% at rank 10. Chasca can still deal damage even while you're rotating between your supports. If you think about it, she's the fakest Anemo unit in the game, because the real damage doesn't actually come from Anemo, it comes from the PHEC elements. Some of you might be wondering how the randomness on her A1 and A4 bullets affects her DPS. It could be somewhat difficult to aim for perfect optimization, like if you want to achieve forward Vaporize or forward Melt, but because her base damage is so high, the extra reactions are more of an added bonus than a necessity. Yes indeed, her gameplay is literally this meme. Chasca shits out so much damage that she disregards RNG by sheer brute force. Adding even more perspective to her power scaling, let's revisit her A1 as it does the second component. Functioning just like Navia's A4 passive, wherein for every element in your party that Anemo interfaces with, Chasca gets 15, 35, or 65% bonus damage, greatly incentivizing a rainbow party to get that 65. C0 Chasca actively discourages you from using double element combos like Bennett and Shangling, not only due to the loss of damage, but also due to her preventing a guaranteed shot. However, if you're really that determined to play Shangling in every single team just to prove a point, to which my question is, why? And may I introduce you to her C1, which makes it so the number of different elements you need for a guaranteed bullet conversion goes from 3 to 2. The main reason to get this constellation is because it opens up the ability for you to include Xilonen in your party. Normally, it is inefficient to do so because Geo is incompatible with Anemo, but by doing this you can mitigate that compromise. Currently, Chasca's best party is speculated to be herself, Bennett, Farina, and Xilonen. You do still disqualify yourself from the 65% damage as it only drops to count for the proc chance, not the bonus damage, meaning you only get 35%. But if you have, say, a C1 R1 Xilonen, the benefits more than outweigh the costs, as you get an elemental shred, some healing, stagger resistance, bonus power from her weapon, and most importantly, Scroll of Cinder City, assuming you weren't using Ororon with her already, whom I'll talk about later in the video. There's one extra reason to pair Chasca with Xilonen. If you can recall, Xilonen's A4 passive makes it so she can trigger a Night Soul Burst of her own that doesn't count towards the global Night Soul Burst cooldown, which means Chasca gets to fire an additional A4 shell up to twice per rotation of her skill for an extra 900% damage. Currently, Xilonen is the only playable character with a personal Night Soul Burst. Is it a bit predatory to hide an incredibly strong synergistic element between two characters behind a constellation? Perhaps, but at this point it's not like they haven't done that before. However, there's more. If you fork out the extra cash and get her C2, then you can get the full 65% bonus with just 2 elements, exactly like in Neuvillette C1. Additionally, the first bolt that fires out of each volley of Chasca's skill comes with a 400% attack explosion that deals big AoE damage. She's primarily a single target attacker, but with this constellation, she becomes an everything attacker essentially. In fact, I might go on record to say at C2 she's every bit C2 Neuvillette's equal in that regard. Both become extremely brainless to play, and both are extremely strong and consistent. Just like with Milani, I neglected to mention Chasca's Burst yet for the simple reason that it's just damage. Seems like Koyo's officially going down the route of the elemental skill doing everything while the ultimate takes a back seat. Chasca's Burst is basically a fully loaded blast of her skill volley, dealing a chunk of Anemo damage on cast and then unleashing 6 bullets divided into 3 pairs of 2 bullets that randomly select from one of the corresponding elemental types in your party. For reference, if say you have 3 pyro units, which you should not for reasons I mentioned already, all 6 bullets from her ultimate will be pyro damage. Combining all of them together, and her burst does roughly over 2500%. Depending on your energy recharge, the 15-second cooldown means it will go off about once every other rotation, give or take. It should be noted that her ultimate has a fairly decent area of effect, just enough to where if there are mooks you want to clear out before unloading on the big boss, you can do just that. Although like I said, if you ever see 2, she breaks everything basically. There's really no other way to put this. Chasca's gonna be joining Neuvillette and Arlecchino in the pantheon of stupidly broken DPS characters who can do basically everything. She has insanely high consistent DPS output, enough to where each of her volleys deals the same damage as a burst damage oriented unit. This in tandem with her Night Soul mount being a floating gun that has the same flight capabilities as Wanderer make her an exquisite unit not just in combat but also for exploration. Dare I say, in any place that isn't Fontaine's underwater, she might be in contention for beating out Neuvillette in overworld exploration combat. It took Hoyle less than a year to make a second unit with the same power and privileges as him, and we're not even at the Pyro Archon yet. Really quickly before I move on to Ororon, I want to give a quick mention to her bow. Astral Vulture is a crit damage bow that gives 24% attack for 12 seconds after triggering a swirl reaction, and the wielder gains 20 or 40% bonus charge attack damage, which happens to be the same type of damage her hold skill does, and 10 or 24% bonus elemental burst damage depending on if there are 1 or 2 or more characters in the party of a different element than the wielder. Exactly what you were planning on doing with Chasca anyway. Far and away her best option, and it doesn't come even close. While you can certainly play her at C0R0, her sweet spot's definitely C0R1 for free-to-plays and C2R1 for pay-to-wins. I am beginning to notice a pattern here with Natlan's 5 stars. 5-star units aside, let's give mention to our newest 4-star, Ororon. That's gonna be hard to say over and over. Ororon's a really busted-ass 4-star, which is funny considering I made a video on how we need to stop being scared of releasing 4 stars on the level of the power 5. Well, they just did. Ororon might suffer from the same issue as every other new character, wherein his ability descriptions are quite verbose, but the premise is overall very simple. His skill just deals damage, that's it. Not a bad chunk of damage, but it's ultimately just damage. Unfortunately, the 15-second cooldown doesn't really do him any favors when it comes to battery. The main points of interest are his burst and A1. Ororon's burst is a summon that holds out for 9 seconds with a cooldown of 15, drawing aggro and pulsating electro damage to nearby enemies. Having an uptime of only 60% may seem like a bad thing, but bear with me for a moment. His A1 passive makes it so when nearby enemies take electro charge or Night Soul line damage, Ororon consumes Night Soul to deal a chunk of electro damage to up to 4 nearby enemies once every 1.8 seconds. It is integral to keep in mind that just like our favorite Tunibule, Ororon's burst and A1 passive have no internal cooldown, giving him an insane amount of electro application, even more copious than Fischl actually, although to be fair he doesn't have the same duration as she does. Okay guys, this is 5 AM Vars. Apologies to the raspy voice, I literally just woke up and I have like 4 hours of sleep. So just a quick clarification, because I felt like if I didn't address this I'll get roasted really hard in the comments. Turns out Ororon does have internal cooldowns in his A1 as well. Basically, while he does have an internal cooldown in Taser teams because of how Electro Charge works, it's as if he doesn't have one, and since he does a ton of AoE application, single target, yes, he does have a meaningful ICD I suppose, but in AoE scenarios he practically doesn't. Just want to clear that up because I know people are going to call me out on the no internal cooldown comment. Also, later in the video I'm going to say he prioritizes application. Just to clarify right now, it's an AoE application. So yeah, everything should be fine still in terms of like what I say, but I felt like if I didn't clear this up it would be pretty bad. So anyways, I'm going to go back to bed. Enjoy the rest of the video. Evidently, he's mostly meant to be played in Taser teams, which just so happened to go from a 1.2 base multiplier to 2 times as of version 5.2. I plan to make a separate video talking about the buffs to electro-based reactions, so be sure to stay tuned for that. Back to the topic at hand, seeing as he's a 4-star, let's give mention to his constellations, namely C4 and C6. C4 grants him 25% faster rotation speed and helps out with energy management. Faster rotation speed translates to more electro application, simple enough. Finally, when triggering A1 passive, C6 makes it so the active character gains 10% bonus attack for 9 seconds, capping out at 30% attack on 3 activations. This buff in particular changes a lot of the dynamic between Ororon and Fischl. Ororon essentially prioritizes application and supportive utility, while Fischl is focused on uptime and personal damage. This would have you believing they're side grades of each other, but in actuality, Ororon's more or less a decent upgrade to Fischl in any team except spread, according to theory crafting speculation. For one very simple reason, Cinder City. As a Natlan unit, Ororon can tap into the full 40% damage boost on that artifact set, which is a huge advantage compared to Fischl, who cannot. He can concentrate more electro application in a shorter amount of time while also buffing his team by a substantial amount, provided you don't already have someone wearing that set in your hypothetical party. I'm not implying that Ororon is significantly better than Fischl, he's only marginally better. The point I'm trying to make though is that he's the first 4-star character since, I guess, Shinobu, who is power 5 material. Perhaps if we factor in the buffs to Overload, Chevris is also power 5 material now, but if we're especially talking about general usability, he's the first 4-star character in Genshin Impact history to directly challenge the power 5 in both effectiveness and versatility. The key difference between him and the likes of Shinobu and Chevris is that those two actively avoid competing against their respective elements' power 5 representative, but Ororon is competing with Fischl in the same element. Granted, there will always be the option to put them together, and I have a feeling people will, but it's kind of crazy that in a single patch we have a 5-star and a 4-star who were essentially top tier on arrival. Genshin Impact has officially reached an inflection point. For the past 4 years, they tried their best to keep their characters in check and not push the needle too far too fast. But in light of Shilonen and now Chasca and Ororon, I have a feeling they're breaking open the floodgates this time around. Traditionally, Hoya would only make the region's Archon and maybe only 1 or 2 units broken to hell, but with the exception of Kachina, Natlan has made every single character either tier 1 or straight up tier 0. Not just in terms of power but also capability. Remember, Chasca's the first character in Genshin to intrinsically deal elemental damage besides her own. If they're ambitious enough to start doing things like this, who knows what else they plan to do for future characters. As a DPS unit, I don't believe Chasca's a must pull, but she comes damn near close to being one. Tied with Arlecchino for the highest average single target DPS in the game, while at the same time having a modicum of AoE damage on her ultimate, and then fantastic AoE damage on her C2. In fairness, you do have to account for your party members. On that note, if I can highlight one downside to Chasca, is that she doesn't basic attack at all, preventing her from using any follow-up attack Hydra supports like Yelan and Qingchou. It really boils down to just Farina, thereby making it very challenging to field both a fully optimal Chasca party and a fully optimal Neuvillette party in the same spiral of this one, but that can easily change in the future. Again, the craziest thing is that we still haven't seen Mavuika or Capitano, assuming the latter's gonna be playable. Part of me is excited, another part of me is nervous. I'm gonna err on the side of optimism in that we'll never have another Dia incident, but I also don't hope we pull a Brave Frontier power creep and every new unit is twice the strength of the previous one. What do you guys think about Chasca and Ororon? Do you feel good about them, or do you think this is a precursor to Genshin breaking the game's balance in half and ruining the game? Feel free to share in the comments down below. For now, if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other Natlan character first impressions if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.